What's got us all talking for the wrong reasons is the ever-obnoxious Hugh Grant. He seemingly delighted in humiliating interviewer, the supermodel Ashley Graham, on the non-red carpet.
Talk shows are meant to entertain, light banter, celebrity gossip, a few laughs, and maybe a heartfelt story or two. But not every guest plays along.
Proven it.
Here's what I would say to you. I believe it was a free and fair election and that you lost.
You don't really believe
that's
that?
my belief.
All right. Well, then you're a fool.
However,
then you're a fool.
Maybe I am a fool.
Over the years, some stars have pushed too far, clashed with hosts, or created such uncomfortable moments that they were never invited back. And in some cases, explicitly banned. From awkward interviews to explosive walk-offs. Stay tuned for celebrities who crossed the line and paid the price on national television. Piers Morgan bans 3 guests. If there's one talk show host who doesn't believe in keeping feuds private, it's Piers Morgan. Blunt, combative, and famously allergic to diplomacy, Morgan has built a career out of calling people out, especially when they appear on his turf and don't behave. Unlike many talk show hosts who quietly blacklist difficult guests, Piers is often happy to make the ban public, naming names and detailing exactly why a guest won't be returning. And at the top of his blacklist, Hugh Grant. The tension between Hugh Grant and Piers Morgan didn't start on camera. It had been simmering beneath the surface for years. But it finally boiled over after a red carpet interview in 2011 that led Morgan to publicly call Grant the rudest and tedious man he has ever had the misfortune to meet. The incident occurred during the BAFTA Awards, where CNN, then airing Piers Morgan Tonight, had a camera crew backstage. According to Morgan, Grant showed up irritated and impatient, reportedly complaining about the clip reel and being rude to producers. Morgan, who wasn't even conducting the interview personally, said he heard from multiple crew members that Grant's behavior was condescending and dismissive. In response, Piers Morgan tweeted, "Hugh Grant is banned from my show. He is a boring little man and very rude." He followed it up with an op-ed in the Daily Mail, claiming Grant had a long history of difficult behavior with the media, and that his attitude backstage confirmed it. Morgan called him a tedious little man with a superiority complex, and made it clear he would never invite Grant onto his show again. To his credit, Hugh Grant didn't completely deny the accusations. He replied publicly on Twitter, "Turns out my inner crab got the better of me." Unreserved apologies to the team on the red carpet. He later elaborated in interviews that the incident had caught him in a bad mood and that he regretted his tone with the crew. Grant has long admitted he can be difficult in high-pressure media settings and said he tries to work on it. Another name on Piers Morgan's not welcome list, actor Kelsey Grammer. In 2012, Grammer was scheduled to appear on Piers Morgan Tonight. Everything was in place, the studio, the producers, the questions, until Grammer saw a photo of his ex-wife Camille flash on screen moments before the show started. Without warning, he stormed off the set. Piers was blindsided. Speaking about the incident later, he claimed Grammer's team had approved the segment in advance, including the image in question, and that the actor simply threw a fit. What annoyed Piers more was the lack of professionalism. Morgan told reporters at the time that Grammer saw a photo of his ex-wife and ran off the set like a teenage drama queen. It was pathetic, saying, "You don't do that on live TV. You don't waste people's time." Needless to say, Grammer was never invited back. In 2017, actor Ewan McGregor was scheduled to appear on Good Morning Britain, co-hosted by Piers Morgan. The day of the interview, McGregor pulled out last minute, but not due to illness or scheduling issues. He made it clear he didn't want to sit across from Piers Morgan. McGregor's issues stemmed from Piers's criticism of the Women's March that year, which McGregor had attended. The actor tweeted, "Was going on Good Morning Britain, didn't realize Piers Morgan was host." won't go on with him after his comments about the Women's March. Morgan fired back in typical style, calling McGregor a hypocrite and mocking his performance in Trainspotting. He also questioned McGregor's understanding of free speech, saying, "You march for freedom, but can't face a debate with someone who disagrees with you? Grow up, Ewan." Although McGregor wasn't technically banned, the feud was so public that neither side would likely entertain the idea of an interview again. Unlike many hosts who dodge questions about banned guests or brush aside behind-the-scenes conflicts, Piers Morgan embraces them. He's repeatedly said that rudeness, snobbery, and unprofessional behavior, especially toward crew members, is a deal-breaker for him. And if that means banning a few celebrities, so be it. His philosophy is clear: status doesn't excuse behavior. Whether it's an Oscar-winning actor or a chart-topping musician, if they show up on his set with an ego and attitude, they won't be invited back. If there's one guest who's managed to get soft banned, hard banned, and we just don't want him here banned across multiple shows, it's Donald J. Trump. The man didn't just burn bridges in late night, he lit them on fire, built new ones with gold-plated names, and then sued the river for flowing the wrong way. Donald Trump blacklisted on 3 shows. Let's start with Seth Meyers, who publicly banned Trump in 2016 after Trump's campaign revoked press credentials for The Washington Post. Meyers took it personally, not for himself but for journalism. He looked into the camera and said, "As long as The Washington Post is banned from Trump's campaign, Trump is banned from this show." Mic drop, moral high ground, no Trump. Over at Jimmy Kimmel Live, Kimmel wasn't feeling very Trump-friendly either. He didn't ban Donald directly, but when asked about hosting Donald Jr. or Eric, his response was basically, "There are no smart ones, no thanks." That's not shade, that's an eclipse. Meanwhile, The View offered Trump a few invites back in 2016, and he ghosted them. After that, they just stopped asking. Executive producer Brian Teta said, "We haven't asked him to come back in a long time," which, being honest, is just a polite way of saying, "We're good, thanks." Jon Stewart's worst guest. Jon Stewart, known for his sharp wit and calm composure during even the most heated Daily Show interviews, once named Hugh Grant as the worst guest in the show's history, and didn't hesitate about it. During a 2012 panel moderated by Stephen Colbert, Stewart told the audience how difficult he was to work with. The appearance in question took place in 2009, when Grant came on to promote Did You Hear About the Morgans? From the moment he arrived, Stewart claimed Grant was difficult. He reportedly complained about everything: the backstage setup, the production staff, and even the clip the show had prepared for him. "What is that clip?" Grant reportedly asked, and Stewart responded, telling him to make a better movie. What made Stewart's complaint so striking was that it came from someone who had hosted dictators on his show, literally. But Grant, he claimed, was worse than all of them. What elevated this story from simple venting to a moment of raw showbiz truth was Grant's reaction. He didn't deny it. Grant's rare public apology gave the incident some closure, but it's telling that he was never invited back to The Daily Show during Stewart's tenure. And Stewart himself never walked back his opinion. The moment was a candid reminder that even the most celebrated celebrities can be deeply unpleasant behind the scenes. In the world of late night, where guests are usually treated with reverence, Stewart's honesty stood out. It wasn't just about a bad interview, it was about treating people with respect, no matter how famous you are. And in that moment, Stewart showed he wasn't afraid to burn a bridge in the name of integrity. Craig Ferguson rarely lost control of an interview. The Scottish comedian, known for his sharp improvisation and relaxed approach on The Late Late Show, was a master at making awkward moments disappear. But even he had a breaking point, and it came in the form of an interview with singer Macy Gray, Craig Ferguson's worst-ever guest. When Ferguson appeared on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen in 2014, a fan asked him who his worst-ever guest was. Ferguson, without hesitation, responded, "Macy Gray. It was a disaster." He quickly clarified that he liked her as a person and respected her as an artist, but the actual segment was almost impossible to manage. Ferguson admitted he didn't know what was going on during the taping. Her energy was unpredictable, her answers confusing, and the flow of conversation completely offbeat. Although the original Late Late Show episode featuring Gray still circulates online, it's not easy to find the exact moment that went wrong, which only adds to the mystique. According to viewers and fans who saw it when it aired, Macy Gray appeared aloof and possibly disoriented. Some thought she might have been under the influence, though no confirmation ever followed. Ferguson didn't accuse her of bad behavior or malice. In fact, his tone was light, more self-deprecating than angry. He took some of the blame himself, suggesting he hadn't yet developed the skills to handle a guest who didn't play by the usual rules. Despite being a famously chaotic host himself, often tearing up cue cards and ignoring preset questions, Ferguson's attempt at saving the Macy Gray interview clearly didn't work, and it stuck with him for years. Unlike some celebrity feuds, this one never turned personal. Macy Gray didn't respond publicly, and Ferguson never banned her explicitly, but she never appeared on the show again. The interview quietly vanished from the guest circuit. Today, the moment stands as a rare example of two creative forces clashing on live TV, and proof that even the best hosts occasionally run into guests they just can't figure out. Graham Norton's Blacklist. For a man known as the king of British charm and effortless banter, Graham Norton doesn't ruffle easily. In over 2 decades of The Graham Norton Show, he's sat across from everyone from Hollywood royalty to chaos agents like Miriam Margolyes and Russell Brand, and managed to keep things funny. But even Graham has limits. While he rarely outright bans guests, there are a few whose performances were so awkward, tense, or disruptive that he's quietly made sure they've never returned. Let's start with the one guest Norton didn't even allow to appear, despite his aggressive efforts. Before his downfall, Harvey Weinstein wielded enormous power in Hollywood. He also wanted the kind of publicity a red couch interview could offer. But according to Norton himself, Weinstein was a horrible man who kept badgering his producers to get on the show, even when The Graham Norton Show had nothing to promote for him. You'd expect Robert De Niro to be a dream guest, legendary career, iconic roles, a million stories. But according to Norton, the actor delivered absolutely nothing. De Niro has been on the show multiple times, and each time, according to the host, he gave off the same vibe: bored. Norton once said that having De Niro on was like having a quiet man at the end of the bar who doesn't want to be bothered. He didn't tell stories, didn't riff with other guests, and barely reacted to Norton's questions. Not that he wasn't invited again, but he is one of Graham's worst guests. Now, this one actually did air, and remains one of the most chaotic episodes of the show ever broadcast. In 2013, Mark Wahlberg appeared on The Graham Norton Show alongside Sarah Silverman and Michael Fassbender. From the moment he walked on set, it was clear Wahlberg had been pre-gaming hard. He interrupted other guests, made lewd jokes, draped himself over Norton's lap, and at one point looked like he might fall asleep mid-segment. To Norton's credit, he held the chaos together with a smile. But the backstage verdict was clear: never again. Graham Norton rarely plays the villain. His show is known for making even the most awkward celebrities look charming. But when someone pushes the limits, whether by being drunk, silent, boring, or just plain unpleasant, he doesn't make a scene. He simply never books them again. That perhaps, is the most British cancellation of all. Lorraine Kelly has seen it all. With a career that spans over 4 decades, the Scottish TV icon has interviewed just about everyone: royalty, rock stars, Oscar winners, and reality stars who barely lasted 1 season. But as every seasoned host will admit, not all guests come wrapped in charm and good manners. Lorraine Kelly's worst quest. In interviews and public appearances, especially at the 2024 Hay Festival, Lorraine pulled back the curtain and named names. When Lorraine Kelly was asked to name the single worst celebrity she'd ever interviewed, she didn't even pause and said Kevin Spacey. Very arrogant, didn't like him at all. That blunt response came during a chat with Woman and Home, and it sent ripples across entertainment circles. Lorraine didn't get into the details of the exact moment, but her tone made it clear. It wasn't a one-off eye roll or diva request. It was a deeply uncomfortable encounter from the moment the man walked in. Insiders have often described Spacey as charming with certain interviewers and coldly dismissive with others. For Lorraine, it was very much the latter. She noted that he was rude not just to her, but to her crew, and came across as completely disinterested in the format of the show. Whatever veneer of Hollywood polish Spacey usually maintained had clearly been peeled off for that particular morning segment. And this was long before any of the scandals that later unraveled his public image. If Kevin Spacey was outright rude, Harrison Ford was just tired of it all. Lorraine described Ford as one of the most difficult interviews, not because he yelled or threw shade, but because he simply didn't seem like he wanted to be there. Her comment? She said he was very grumpy. You could tell right away he wasn't in the mood to chat. The atmosphere, she explained, was painfully stiff. Simple questions like what drew you to the role were met with mumbling or shoulder shrugs. There were no tantrums or drama, just a thick wall of indifference that hung in the air like a gray cloud. It was a classic case of an actor doing press because his contract said so, not because he cared to share anything meaningful with viewers at home. Worse still, Lorraine admitted that the energy in the room shifted instantly the moment Ford walked in. Everyone, makeup artists, producers, even the floor manager, picked up on the vibe. It's the kind of encounter that leaves a host questioning whether to keep trying or just wrap it up and let the poor guy escape. Another awkward entry on Lorraine's "Do Not Resuscitate This Interview" list is Bruce Willis. And this one had a different flavor entirely. According to Lorraine, Willis wasn't rude, he wasn't cold, he wasn't a diva. He was just confused. He'd take forever to answer a question, and when he did, it made no sense. It felt like he was operating on a completely different frequency. Lorraine recalled the conversation feeling more like an accidental encounter at a bus stop than a celebrity interview. There were long pauses, vague replies, and a sense that Willis either didn't understand the questions or simply wasn't interested in engaging. To the audience at home, it might have come off as quirky or mysterious. But for the woman sitting across from him with a live segment to fill, it was baffling. At the 2025 Hay Festival, Lorraine surprised many by bringing up Mariah Carey as one of her toughest guests. Not because of a full-on meltdown or even diva behavior. No, Carey's issue was that she rambled. In a pre-recorded segment, she gave a 10-minute-long answer that made absolutely no sense. Lorraine, ever the professional, tried to salvage the footage in post-production. But even with editors involved, it was a struggle to find usable sound bites. Carey was pleasant but incoherent, drifting between anecdotes, giggles, and untraceable thought patterns. Unlike Willis or Ford, who were at least semi-aware of the tension, Carey seemed blissfully oblivious. She wasn't mean or dismissive, but her inability to land a thought or finish a sentence left the entire production team in chaos. Then came Lady Gaga, who technically never made it to the worst guest list, because she never made it to the couch at all. Lorraine recalled that the Born This Way singer was scheduled for an interview and everything was ready. The crew, the questions, the lighting, the logistics. But the waiting game started and never ended. We waited 5 to 6 hours, and she just never turned up. That's right, Gaga simply ghosted the taping. No major outburst, no excuse, just hours of waiting, dead air, and a lot of unpaid overtime. Lorraine didn't sound bitter as she told the story, more baffled than anything. She wasn't angry at Gaga directly, but the domino effect it caused was unforgettable. The segment was scrapped. The crew was exhausted. And Lorraine? She went home wondering if maybe she should have booked someone easier, like a Spice Girl. What Lorraine Kelly's list of worst guests highlights isn't just ego clashes or star tantrums, it's the delicate balance of morning TV. This is a world where every second counts. The pace is lightning fast, and charm is a currency that pays better than ratings. Unlike late-night hosts who might diffuse a tense moment with a few edgy jokes, Lorraine's show lives in a softer spotlight, more conversational, more intimate. So when a guest brings arrogance, grumpiness, incoherence, or unpredictability, it doesn't just throw off a segment, it throws off the whole mood of the morning. And for someone like Lorraine, who has built a career on being warm, professional, and relentlessly gracious, calling someone her worst guest is no small thing. Jimmy Fallon has built his reputation on being the affable, giggling host of The Tonight Show, a master of making even the driest celebrities sparkle with energy. But even Fallon, with his relentless optimism, couldn't save one of his most famously awkward interviews. Robert De Niro. Jimmy Fallon, most awkward guest. When Fallon was first handed the reins of Late Night with Jimmy Fallon in 2009, he needed a big name to kick off the new era. De Niro, a towering figure in Hollywood, two-time Oscar winner, and New York legend, seemed like a perfect choice. On paper, at least. What followed was a deeply uncomfortable encounter that Fallon himself has never forgotten. In several interviews since then, Fallon has called it his most awkward experience on air. He described how De Niro gave short, clipped answers, mostly just a yeah, no, and long silences. For a host who thrives on banter, it was a nightmare. In an interview with Howard Stern, Fallon admitted saying he had nothing. De Niro came out, sat down, and it was like pulling teeth. It's like, hey, welcome to the show, Robert De Niro, and he was met with nothing. Fallon even confessed he started sweating mid-interview and literally ran out of questions to ask. A terrifying moment for any talk show host, especially one launching a new show. And the discomfort wasn't just felt by Fallon, viewers at home picked up on it too, with comments flooding in about how painfully stiff the segment was. To be fair, De Niro has long had a reputation for being reserved in interviews. He's an intensely private actor who doesn't thrive in chatty, off-the-cuff formats. But what made this situation especially rough was the timing. Fallon needed a big win, and instead, he got an early taste of on-air dead air. Despite the rocky start, Fallon brought De Niro back on later, once the show was more established. They eventually developed a mutual respect, but that first night remains cemented in Fallon's memory as a lesson in preparation and unpredictability. In fact, Fallon has gone on to joke that he'd never been so nervous in his life, not even at the Emmys or SNL, because the moment he ran out of questions, he thought his entire career was going to unravel on live television. Stephen Colbert's experience with Trump. Stephen Colbert, master of sharp political satire and quick improv, has hosted thousands of guests across The Colbert Report and The Late Show. Known for his ability to put celebrities and politicians on the spot with a charming grin, Colbert rarely flinches. But even he hasn't been immune to interviews that flatlined, unraveled, or just made everyone a little uncomfortable. And he's not shy about calling them out. Let's start with the only guest Colbert has directly referred to as disappointing, Donald Trump. In 2015, during the early stages of Trump's presidential run, Colbert scored a highly anticipated interview with him on The Late Show. This was long after Colbert had spent years parodying Trump's bravado and business claims on the Colbert Report. Expectations were sky high. People assumed it would be fireworks. Instead, Colbert was visibly underwhelmed. In a later interview with Andy Cohen, he admitted that it was kind of disappointing because Trump played the reasonable man. He played it safe. Trump avoided confrontation, barely made eye contact, and stuck to bland talking points. For a host who thrives on quick banter and unexpected moments, it was like trying to roast a marshmallow that wouldn't catch fire. Colbert never invited Trump back and told The Hollywood Reporter that he wouldn't want to. For a man who built a career on sharp satire, being bored by the most controversial political figure of a generation, that's saying something. Then there was Rose McGowan, an interview Colbert fans still talk about, usually with a wince. In 2018, McGowan appeared on The Late Show promoting her memoir and discussing the #MeToo movement. Colbert, known for balancing serious topics with levity, tried to steer the conversation gently. But McGowan veered off script immediately, bringing an intense and confrontational energy that clashed with the show's usual tone. She interrupted, changed topics mid-sentence, and made statements that left Colbert visibly scrambling. One particularly awkward moment came when she questioned the entire premise of the interview, saying, "Why do I even need to be here?" The audience laughed nervously. Colbert smiled, but it was strained. Fans called the moment uncomfortable, chaotic, and impossible to follow. Some praised her candor, but the lack of structure and mounting tension made for what felt less like an interview and more like a hostage negotiation. Colbert never addressed it afterward, but the silence spoke volumes. Comedian Bill Burr brings chaos with him wherever he goes, and his 2017 interview with Colbert proved it. Burr's no-filter humor and rapid-fire rants are great for podcasts, but they don't always translate well to network television. From the moment Burr sat down, he hijacked the conversation. When Colbert tried to steer him toward topics like fatherhood or current events, Burr responded with sarcasm, side eyes, and often complete disregard. Burr fans loved the appearance, but many casual viewers found the energy mismatched. Colbert looked at times like he was riding a bull that refused to be tamed or even acknowledged. Burr didn't do poorly, he just didn't care, and it showed. Kristen Stewart's 2017 appearance on The Late Show wasn't offensive or combative. It was just off. While promoting Personal Shopper, Stewart came across as distant, disinterested, and visibly uncomfortable. Colbert, known for disarming even the most uptight guests, struggled to connect. The vibe was so cold you could hear the metaphorical wind howling between them. In one moment, when Stephen Colbert touched her necklace trying to move it from the microphone, was misinterpreted and evidently made Kristen uncomfortable. To be fair, Stewart has admitted in other interviews that she struggles with talk shows. But that didn't help Colbert much at the moment. By the end of the interview, both looked like they'd just completed a dental exam, relieved it was over. Conan O'Brien, worst guest. Out of the thousands of celebrities Conan O'Brien has interviewed in his long late-night career, from Hollywood royalty to rock stars, and even the occasional llama, there's one guest who stands out as the absolute worst. And the distinction isn't based on internet rumor or tabloid exaggeration. No, this is straight from Conan's mouth. The worst guest he's ever had was cult filmmaker Abel Ferrara. You probably know Ferrara from gritty indie films like Bad Lieutenant or King of New York, but in 1996, when he was invited on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, he wasn't just unpredictable, he was practically unhinged. And even before the cameras started rolling, things were going wrong. According to Conan, Ferrara literally tried to escape the building before his segment. Yes, escape. Conan recalled during a 2018 interview on the Armchair Expert podcast with Dax Shepard that Abel fled the building. Someone from NBC had to physically run and catch him. He ran off, and someone had to go get him in the hallway and drag him back. Already, that's a red flag. But then came the actual interview. Ferrara was reportedly either intoxicated or deeply uninterested in being there. He slurred through answers, refused to make eye contact, and seemed irritated at even the most basic questions. At one point, Conan, usually a master at salvaging awkward interviews, couldn't hide his discomfort. He was just out of his mind. Conan later said he was completely out of control. Ferrara's responses barely made sense. He rambled, contradicted himself, and gave off an energy that teetered between hostile and barely conscious. The audience laughed nervously, sensing that whatever was happening was veering dangerously off script. Conan did what he could to keep things moving, but even he admitted it was like interviewing a wild animal that had just been let into the studio. What made it worse was that Ferrara wasn't a massive A-lister the audience was dying to see. He was niche, a name known to cinephiles, but not a guaranteed crowd pleaser. So the bizarre behavior didn't come off as endearingly eccentric, the way it might with someone like Joaquin Phoenix. It just seemed chaotic. Over the years, Conan has had his share of odd guests, standoffish, some dull, others just plain weird, but none as difficult or disruptive as Ferrara. And unlike other bad guests, who eventually became running jokes or were invited back for redemption interviews, Ferrara was never seen again on any of Conan's shows. In typical Conan fashion, though, he's managed to turn the traumatic moment into comedy gold. When discussing bad guests in interviews or at live shows, the Ferrara story always comes up, and the way Conan tells it now is half horror, half hilarity. Whenever someone asks him about my worst guest, he says, "It's not even close." Abel Ferrara, no contest. The stories even become a fan-favorite anecdote, cemented into late-night lore. On YouTube and Reddit, late-night fans routinely rank it among the all-time most awkward talk show moments, despite the full clip being hard to find. Strangely, Ferrara himself seemed unaware or indifferent to the chaos he caused. In later interviews, he's made passing references to having done Conan, but never acknowledged just how off the rails it got. In the world of talk shows, where most guests are PR polished and media trained to the point of blandness, someone like Ferrara is certainly memorable. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and click on the next video shown on your screen.